What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here, and welcome to the GSD Mode Podcast, your most trusted resource to help you continue to grow and scale your real estate business. Where each and every single week, I'm delivering serious information for serious real estate professionals looking to get shit done and create serious results, all 100% free. Nothing being sold, no BS, no fluff, no theory, just great, amazing content to help you, again, continue to level up inside your real estate business. Now, real quick, before we jump into today's content, there are 4 extremely important things that I want you to do, that I want you to take action on right now. These will only take you seconds to do, but this will ensure that you are set up for maximum success, have access to all this great content, all these great free resources, as well as to ensure that you are not missing out on all of the realtor to realtor referrals that are constantly and consistently taking place between all of our amazing GSD Mode podcast listeners. All right, so number 1, I want you to watching this on YouTube right now, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and then tap that notification bell. That will ensure that you are alerted every single time a new one of these GSD Mode podcasts is released. All right, so number 2, wherever your go-to podcast audio place is. So wherever you go to listen to your podcast app, I want you to pull up the GSD Mode Podcast and make sure to subscribe to it there. The GSD Mode Podcast is currently on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. And this will ensure and allow you to be able to listen to all this amazing content while you're driving, while you're working out, while you're on the go, and all of that. All right, number 3, make sure to join the GSD Mode free Facebook mastermind group, where that you can then go in and mastermind with thousands and thousands of realtors, team leaders, broker owners, right? And again, you guys, these are all GSD Mode podcast listeners that are all seriously committed to leveling up inside their real estate business. Plus, I create and have exclusive content and resources available to just that group alone, can only be accessed inside that group, doing Facebook Lives and so forth. So I want to make sure that you don't miss out on that either. And then lastly, again, as I mentioned a moment ago, all the realtor to realtor referrals are taking place inside this GSD Mode Facebook group. So this will ensure that you do not miss out on any of those referrals. And look, if you don't find value on it, if you don't like once you jump in, if you're not seeing the value in it, if you think it's a distraction, right? It's harmless. You can just leave the group anytime that you want, right? So definitely go check that out and make sure that you join that group right away. I will make sure that you are approved. I go in there once a day, every single day, and approve all members and so forth. All right, last thing. And I've saved the best for last. Make sure that you go snag my new book, Dominate Your Real Estate Business, Top Tips from a Top Producer. There's 42 tips, strategies throughout this whole entire book. There's 100 pages. Each chapter is a different tip, a different strategy that are fully proven, that I've implemented in my business and that have allowed me to become one of the top realtors and team leaders on the planet, and will 100% allow you and help you to be able to go out and dominate your real estate business as long as you implement and take action on what you learn. But you guys, these are gold. There's no stories in here. It's all, again, 100% free. So you can go snag your free copy right now at joshuasmithfreebook.com, joshuasmithfreebook.com. Now, if you just scroll below, if you're not to be able to take it, you're not able to take action on these now, go into the notes. You'll see all of these. You can take action right then and there inside the notes, but make sure that you take action on these. So again, you are set up fully for success. And as I mentioned, you guys, nothing being sold, no BS, no fluff, no theory, just great resources, great content, great information to help you on this success journey that we are all on and leveling up our real estate businesses. All right, let's jump on into today's epic, amazing GSD Mode podcast content. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast interview. And today, guys, we are all blessed and honored to be joined with an amazing rock star guest today, Bao Lee. So just to give you guys a quick background on a little bit of what Bao does today, and then we'll jump into his journey and so forth. But today he works with dozens of agents and broker owners on how to lead with empathy, how to go out there and be great leaders, if you will, by leading with empathy and compassion and so forth, and how to go out there and build a successful digital brokerage. And like we're all kind of in that space where things are becoming more virtual. Well, how do you have that that same impact and be that effective leader? And so we're going to go deep into a lot of this. And you guys, as you hear his journey and what led him to where he is today, it's kind of all those perfect things that kind of forged him into having this expertise that allows him to be so effective today. So really stoked and honored to have Bao on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked, dude. So, before we get into all the amazing things that you're doing today, and again, man, I'm really intrigued on this, from a personal level, kind of a selfish level, as well as for all of our audience, because it's, look, I mean, today, and it's not even just COVID-19 that happened, but that definitely kind of accelerated a lot of the virtual component of our work. But even before that, virtual is becoming more and more popular. Whether that be a full-on virtual brokerage, whether that be, having virtual staff and giving staff the opportunity to work from a virtual component. And most of my companies now are run virtual today. And look, man, it's been a huge adjustment for me, right? It's, when they're sitting here and I can have eyeballs on them, I see what's going on. I can see their attitude. I can see their energy. I can, right. Like it becomes a different game. And so I'm here to be a student and learn from you too, man. So this is going to be awesome. But before we get into all that, man, why don't we rewind the clocks and kind of go through your journey that led you to where you are today. So rewind that, like how'd this whole journey start in the first place?
Totally. Again, thank you for having me on the GSD Mode Podcast. Such a wonderful opportunity to be here. So traveling a little bit back in time, right? And we're going pretty far back here because the origin of the story and why all you guys are here is to understand why and how I lead my company and my businesses with compassion, empathy, and how that's so vital to becoming a leader in an essence, right? And a lot of this has originated from my background in medicine. When I was going through college, I was a former pre-medical student. And during my time as a pre-medical student, I volunteered with organizations such as Doctors Without Borders, the Global Medical Brigades, volunteer for medical outreach. I've traveled to third world countries to assist with medical care, Vietnam, Honduras, where some highlights to name a few. And I also got an internship opportunity to shadow surgeons, like an actual operating room over at the UC Davis Medical Center. And being in this environment, being able to shadow, watch surgeons and be able to interact with people from third world countries who are so grateful to have this assistance, to have this medical assistance, really pulls and draws out the compassion side of you, the empathy. You see their struggles, you see the things they kind of go through, and it makes you want to help them, right? And as I went through college, this kind of stuck with me, right? And when I graduated, I decided to continue like my medical journey, right? And so I studied for the medical entrance exams that called the MCAT, did really well in the sciences, did really terrible with the verbal reasoning part, and so I retook it. While I was doing that, I had worked in fine dining. This was kind of like where I got my first taste of kind of like the entrepreneurial bug. Right? I got bit by the entrepreneurial bug. And that was when, working in fine dining, Michelin stars, where the meals are like $200, $300 per person on a given night, you're kind of asking yourself, hey, what kind of people are dining here? Business owners, stock investors, real estate investors, realtors, real estate people, right? And that was where I kind of got that entrepreneurial bug. That doesn't show up again until a little bit later, but I think that it was important to kind of like let you know where that kind of originated from. And from that stemmed reading books that really shaped my entrepreneurial road, right? So from there, I left the fine dining to get more real world experience related to medicine so that I continue to go to medical school. And I got a job in biotech as kind of like a lab associate person that runs like measurements and all that stuff. And it was good. It was kind of like my first taste of corporate. I was like, all right, this isn't so bad, I always got like this negative vibe from like corporate in a sense when I was like kind of going through medicine. But I was like, this isn't so bad, right? And so as I was going on, I kind of lost my passion for medicine just because of how long it would have taken to get to where I wanted to be. I was college student. I didn't have that kind of patience. It was like, I didn't want to go back to school for 12 years, right? After graduating from undergrad, I didn't want to go back to school for 12 years. And that's what I would have done needed to do in order to become a surgeon. But that didn't mean I lost my ability to empathize or my compassion for other people and people who are less privileged than I am, right? So that continued. And so when I lost my way, that was when I kind of started getting involved in tech, right? And with regards to tech, I taught myself how to code first, and then I jumped feet first into a coding bootcamp after I realized the opportunities that software engineering had for me. So I went through a coding bootcamp, did really, really well, came out and got some really solid opportunities as a job. Got my first job at Dropbox, afterwards LinkedIn, and now I'm at Amazon. So I mean, like, my resume is pretty solid when it comes to software engineering. But now, kind of backtracking to the entrepreneurial part, like, where did my company begin? And it started right around when I entered in Dropbox, because I had the skill sets to build websites and build web apps and things like that. And so at first I was building websites, freelancing for local businesses, building up their websites. And, I started to realize that realtors needed some refreshing website work, at least the ones local to my area. And so I started reaching out to them. And that was when I kind of started niching down, right? That was when I kind of started niching down. And from there, one of the things that I started to realize was that what my clients really needed wasn't just a brand new website. It wasn't a website designed just to be more modern, to be more updated. They needed help with their business in various senses of the word, right? With regards to lead generation, with regards to reviews and things like that. That was when I kind of opened up the spectrum of the services that I had offered as a freelancer, until it got too much, which was then I started niching down again into lead generation via Facebook ads. And this was for chiropractors, physical therapists, and physical trainers, personal trainers, realtors as well, dentists and things like that. And then I niched down even more because, like I said before, when I was in fine dining, I was attracted to the real estate aspect, real estate investors and realtors when I was speaking with them. And I figured I'd double down in real estate. And so that was when I kind of got into the lead generation space for real estate agents. And from there, it kind of developed my program. I developed my program further and further and further to extend beyond just lead generation. And, we started encompassing the scope of the conversion, and then also how to run businesses, how to communicate with the leads that you're generating within the scope of heart, right? Empathy and patience and building that relationship, taking the time to really build that relationship. And so that's kind of like where I'm at today. That's the program that we currently run, and it's been successful so far.
Yep. Love it, man. Love it, dude. So, I mean, it sounds like the service that you guys do it is just kind of multifaceted where, you're able to help them go out there with their lead generation, able to help them, structure those conversations and have the right framework and the right mindset from, a place of compassion, empathy to develop that connection rapport, to have higher conversion ratios. But then from a leadership perspective as well is, how does that carry over to not just leads, but to your clients as well as, your staff, and it's kind of more from there. Yeah, that's amazing, dude. So let's first start with, from the lead side, the lead conversion side.
Mm-hmm.
Because look, dude, I do so many surveys to realtors and have so many interactions with realtors, and I get about 1,000 surveys a month, or maybe even just beyond that at this point of just collecting as much data as we can, right? Seeing what people's biggest obstacles are and so forth. And every time I ask that question of like, what is your current biggest obstacle? That if you could solve this, like, you'd be crushing your real estate goals, right? And it's always, always around lead generation. Well, I've yet to really meet anybody that really at the core has a lead gen problem. They have a lead conversion problem. Their inability to convert those leads into those appointments and then potentially convert those appointments to clients and so forth. And, through this experience, man, and being able to really impact agents and brokers and team leaders and so forth at increasing their conversions, like what have you found to be the most kind of important parts? And I know that this could be a 30-hour training, right? But to
Yeah.
core of like local, like you got to make sure that you're nailing these, 3 or 4 or 5 things, right? Like this is what makes the biggest difference.
Totally. So you're right. Lead generation is never really the issue. There's so many ways to generate leads, both free and paid. It's usually and most likely the lead conversion issue. And what we have found to be the number one solution to that problem is having a system that does a lot of the follow-up for you, because follow-up is king, right? It's the way to get into conversation with these leads, and to get them converted into your clients. And there's various conversations with how to do that once you get in touch with them. But the main issue usually with agents, especially with paid ads, which was something that we focused on, is first getting in touch with the lead in order for them to even know who you are, right? And a lot of agents don't really have at least starting out, don't have the discipline to follow up with these leads till they get the phone appointment, right? It's usually they call the lead once, twice, done. Like, this lead isn't interested. They didn't pick up, they didn't respond to my text, whatever the case is. But we found that in our business, a lot of the times it requires at least 7 to 10 touches, and that's either through text, through Facebook Messenger as well sometimes, as well as phone calls and email. It's all these avenues that are bombarding them so that the agent stays at top of the mind, in order for them to get the initial response. This is just for the first response, by the way, not the second or third response. This is for the first response. And so a lot of agents, they'll give up before they strike diamond or they strike gold, right? And I get it. It's super tedious. When I was first starting my business, I was in sales, right? And after the third or fourth try, touch, whatever the case is, you start getting a little, what's the word for it? Like unmotivated, discouraged, to kind of continue to reach out to these leads when there's fresh leads coming in. That's not to say that you should focus one over the other, but if you have a system in place to be able to automate a lot of the process with drip campaigns for text messages, voicemail drops, video email drops, videos, sending those out to make it more personable, your conversion rates are going to be a lot higher. And in our business, we've seen the conversion rates of older leads go up anywhere from 23 to 25%, which is a lot when you're talking about cold leads. These are cold leads coming in from ads or various lists or things like that, right? So it's having the system in place to be able to set the follow-up so that you can kind of forget about it and focus your time on the clients that need the building of the relationships in order to convert these leads. And that's kind of like the other part that we go into with our program when it comes to lead conversion, is the kind of conversations that you need to have. A lot of that is all scripted already. If you follow like Tom Ferry scripts for expireds and FSBOs or other similar scripts for getting the appointments and building the relationships, you're already there, but you need to adapt and make it your own in order to make you more personable, right? And so that's kind of the things that we kind of go through with our clients in order to get them to be high converting agents.
Yeah, I love it, man. And dude, it's having the right expectations, knowing the numbers, understanding the law of averages. Yeah. And then, we're so blessed to have the technology, there's the technology options that we have today where it can automate and assist with a lot of this, and then keep us on track and target, right? But it's like, okay, I get a new Facebook lead coming in, boom, immediate autoresponder email, autoresponder text, right? It queues off the tasking campaign for me, right? So task me to call them day 1, every other day for the first 14 days, then every 21 days for the first year until that communication happens, puts them on the 1,000-day email and text ball. Like, all of those things are happening simultaneously. So I don't have to necessarily think about it, right? You just got to do the actions. And so having that system is so crucial, so important. And then, and again, understanding that, like you said, okay, 7 to 12, reach out before that first conversation happens. And I don't know what your stats are and so forth, but based on, I'm a little bit of a data freak, but internally with our team, and this is a whole amongst all lead sources, but it's 5 no's before we get a yes from that same person, right? Like, meaning when we offer the appointment, like, we get a no 5 times on average before we get the first yes, right? And it's not that they're rejecting us. It's just maybe they're not ready. They don't see the value yet and so forth. And, just understanding what those numbers are so you don't have false expectations, so you don't get unmotivated, and then talk to us about, because dude, it's knowing what to say and how to say it is important. And look, I love scripts, but I hate scripts. And what I mean by that is I have scripts for everything in my organization, so it gives like my new agents a starting point and so forth. But as soon as I can, like, I want to throw out the scripts and just understand the goals and the frameworks, of the calls, so that I can keep to them. But again, knowing what to say and how to say it is so important. So, with that, like what are some of your top tips, from when those conversations are taking place?
So one of the top tips that I want to say, especially, is to listen. I have a bunch of my sales guys, when they are jumping on these calls, they just don't listen. Sometimes they just keep going, they talk and talk and try to pitch the product. I was actually watching a video yesterday of Jordan Belfort talking about, like, how to sell the pen. And it's the same concept everywhere, right? Selling a pen, it's a proverbial metaphor for whatever product that you're selling, or whatever service you're selling. But the premise of how to sell that pen is not to sell the pen, but to sell the need for the pen, right? You got to figure out what the desire is, why they need the pen, before you even pitch it, right? And then the same thing with real estate. Scripts are important, but you hit the nail on the head there, right? It's more important to have a framework for that script, right? And it's important for the script at first, especially for new agents, because then you'll drill through the script so that you get familiar with it. But once you get enough repetitions, you're comfortable with the script, you can then add your twist to it. Because when you follow a script, it becomes too rigid. And that was one of the issues that we had with some of our agents when they were coached to speak to the leads. They were following the script too closely. And it's also something that we saw within our ISA. A perfect example would be about 2-3 weeks ago, when we were listening on a recorded call from one of our ISAs that call out to expireds and physicals listening and generate appointments for our sellers, or from sellers, was that they were following the script way too rigidly. They were pulling the context out of the equations, abruptly changing the topics, things like that. And it makes the conversation flow very, very, I don't know the word for it, but it fragmented, right? It was very fragmented, where it was changing topics all around, when really what the ISA should have done was go with the flow of the conversation and be able to check mark boxes off of, the topics that needed to be covered within the flow of the conversation. And that's kind of like how we train our agents, is through that. First, the top tip is to go through the script at first, get to know the script, get to know the questions that you need answered, get to know what common objections are, what common responses are, so that you can anticipate that and be able to answer it smoothly. But after you get to that point where you have enough repetitions, you need to go away from the script and set up your own framework for having that conversation without it sounding scripted. And that's where a lot of agents start finding success. For newer agents, a good example would be one of our more recent clients. He was having a conversion rate of under 10%. I would say about 7 to 8%, if I recall correctly, for converting these leads into appointments. But as soon as he started going on his own scripts, like his own framework, where he started asking questions out of order but within the flow of the conversation, and being able to connect with the leads, right? All of a sudden, the focus wasn't the script anymore. The focus was the lead. They were listening a lot more to the lead because they were following the flow of the conversation. His conversion rate shot up to 30%, and it was phenomenal, right? So that I think that'd be the number one tip that I got there for you is drill down on the script first to the point where you get to know it, and then get to the point where you're now just following the framework, flow the conversation and listen, right? So I think that'd be the highlight there.
Yep. So then, when we talked about the sell me this pen, and that concept where, Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, or whatever his name is, it's not about selling the pen, it's about selling the need for the pen, right? So with that philosophy, how do you recommend an agent when they're doing the follow-up? Because then also and look, everybody's got different styles, different philosophies. And what I love is about this industry, or really just success in general, is there's a lot of different paths to create success, right? Like a lot of other top producing, agent friends in this business. And we have two, totally different styles, totally different philosophies, but we both success in our own right. And, but one of mine is always like, you're not selling yourself. You sell yourself at the appointment conduction, right? What you're selling that need for, if you will, is the appointment itself and the value of the appointment. And, so I don't know if you agree with that, but either way, then how do you articulate that through a phone, through words of the value because you're not selling the appointment, you're selling the need for the appointment or the desire for the appointment.
Exactly. And you had a great point there, and it's exactly that, right? You're selling the need for the appointment, and something that we coach our partners, our clients, is don't try to sell yourself on the phone, especially with a lot of the appointments being phone appointments before they become in-person appointments. Sell the need for them, or sell the need for you as the agent to come to the property, take a look, estimate, and this is for sellers specifically, right? Which we've found we like working with a lot, is sell the need for you to go there and communicate with the seller, develop that connection, take a look at the property, that kind of thing, before you can actually give them any sort of guidance, right? And you don't want to like immediately say, hey, I want to list your property. Let me sell your property. Let me list your property. Let's get a listing contract. Before you even get there, the steps that we coach is, when you get on the phone, first talk to them about their needs, the seller's needs. Talk to them about, hey, why are you looking to sell? Are you looking to buy afterwards? Which locations, which areas? It's kind of like finding the underlying why of why they're looking to sell. And then, especially for things like expired listings or FSBOs, you definitely want to talk about why they're trying to sell it on their own, or why it didn't sell in the first place with an expired listing, and figuring out their pain points there with regards to what it's like working with another agent and it didn't work out, or trying to sell it yourself and figuring out, it hasn't been working or something like that. And that's when you kind of position yourself as an authority, because then you understand their pain points, and then you can come in and say, hey, I'd love to have an appointment with you in person, chat and talk about how you can get your home sold for top dollar, right? To get your home sold, I can do it. But before you kind of go into the I can do it, sell the appointment of going there, right? In order to give you a good idea of your updated home value, I need to take a look at what conditions it is. Is there any repairs that need to be made? That kind of thing. And then they go to the appointment. And that's when they pitch themselves, right? Because you never want to do it before. It turns off the leads, like almost immediately, if that's what you lead with. And so the script that our ISAs follow, they never go, oh, I want you to talk and sign up with my lead or my agent. It's always, we're not trying to change your plans. We're not trying to force you into a decision or anything like that. We just want you to have a conversation with our top agent, our top producer, our agent, or our partner, or whatever, before you make a decision, so that you can make an educated decision, right? We just want to lay out all our cards on the table for you, communicate what we think you need in order to be able to sell your home for top dollar by yourself or with us. It doesn't matter. But we would like to be able to meet you first to be able to do so. And that's how you kind of like sell the appointment. At least that's how our agents have been getting the appointments, and then getting them into in-person appointments.
Yeah, man. It's so important, especially more so now than ever with, the average person is sold commercially like 4,000 plus times a day. Like, we don't have the mental capacity to handle that. And mean, people love to consume, they love to buy, they love to, whatever, but they hate being sold. And, and then that's why, tone can matter and making them feel comfortable and, even implement, like we have a very strict, absolute no pressure policy. So, just like you're talking about, but letting them know of, just so we got a very strict absolute no pressure policy. So never be pushed, pressured, zero hassle, zero obligation. The sole purpose of this is just to give you all the information that you need to make the best decision for yourself and for your family, right? And if that decision is now isn't the time to sell, never is the time to sell, you want to sell, and I'm not the agent for you, whatever your decision is, that's okay. The sole purpose again of this meeting is to give you the information, the clarity that you need to then make your next best decision. That's, right. And just making them feel comfortable, going out of your way. It's so important, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right now, dude, it's in most parts of the country. I mean, it is a freaking crazy market, dude. Listing inventory is low, is really probably over most areas. And the question I get on a daily basis is, how do I get more listings right now? Like what for an agent that's looking at that, what's really, because you guys said that you focus on the listing side, what seems to be working best for most of your clients and so forth, as far as just to acquire inventory?
So that's a great question. It is definitely a seller's market with inventory being so low. What we've been focusing on for our partners is still FSBOs and expireds. It's been tried and true. That hasn't changed. We have an ISA team that does all the calling for them. And for expireds, you don't see them as often nowadays, just because homes are selling so quickly, at least in some markets. And so we pull data from 2-3 years back on expireds. And make calls to those because they might not have thought about relisting it for whatever reason. But we also work with FSBOs. In a sense, FSBOs, they see the market's hot, they try to sell it themselves, bank on not needing to pay realtor commissions or whatever the case is. But sometimes it's that they sacrifice the sell price because of that. And so that's something that we communicate on our calls. The ISAs, they're trained to communicate that on the calls. And like you said before, we position as, hey, whether you want to sell with me or not, or you sell it by yourself, we just want to make sure that you're educated. I want to provide you as much value. You're educated on the best ways to go about selling your house. And if you want, you can even send them kind of like a guide. We have a guide that we give to our agents that if they don't have it, it's kind of like an ebook where it's like the 7 steps, I believe it was 7 steps to prepare your home to be sold or selling your home for top dollar. And a lot of that goes with making sure the curb appeal is there, making sure it's staged when you take pictures and things like that. So it's really important that's what you kind of focus on, and where we're getting our seller leads right now. And that's really all we're focusing on. Another way we're doing that is we're getting list of homeowners from the county offices or lead scrapers, and we're using those as kind of like custom audiences, and then every now and then to kind of find lookalike audiences for those when we're doing our advertising, and running Facebook ads for those, Google ads, YouTube ads for seller leads. So we have a wide gamut of how we kind of acquire those seller leads. But predominantly right now, we've been focusing a lot on the ISA portions.
Yeah. Love it, man. Love it, dude. So then if we were to pivot more into, kind of the digital brokerage side, and whether you have a digital brokerage or maybe if you have a physical space, but you just are having more virtual, because look, it's whether it's staff or your agents on your team or your brokerage, I mean, there's still a big digital component to it, right? But again, you don't have, if it's not managed right, it can be very difficult with the culture and so forth. And, like walk us through that, man. It's, you're running a virtual team or a hybrid of it. And, how do you have success with it,
Totally. I was fortunate enough that I started my team off virtually. So like our infrastructure, our framework for the way we run our business is entirely virtual. But the key to making sure that you're running successful virtual businesses is to have layers of accountability, but also trust in your team, building that loyalty through showing compassion and showing empathy and connecting with your team on a personal level, right? To my team, I'm not just the boss. I'm not just the manager. I'm a friend, right? And that's a huge component of it, because it feels like a very flat hierarchy or flat kind of like structure with leadership structure or hierarchy structure, right? Where I'm accessible to every single one of my employees, my contractors, my team. I'm accessible to every single one of them. There's no reporting structure as of yet with regards to, oh, you can't contact me, or you can't get in touch with me because you got a manager in between, right? It's completely flat. And being able to develop those relationships, I think, are really important, because when you develop those relationships, you show compassion, especially in their time of needs, especially during COVID and coronavirus and all that stuff with the pandemic. When you're able to show compassion and stick it out, you build long-term employees, you build a long-term team. And that's how you keep them productive, right? You don't necessarily need to watch over them, like over their shoulders and micromanage them, right? You show them the compassion that they need to see. You show them empathy. You place your trust in them, but also have accountability measures in place. So, for example, for my sales team, I have a daily metrics tracker where before they clock out at the end of the day, they need to fill out this form that lets me know they made this many dials. They did this many discovery or strategy calls. They made this many demo calls. They talked to this many people and pitched this many people before they can clock out, right? And it lets me know whether or not that day they're slacking or not. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But being really understanding of that, and whether or not their environment is affecting them to be from being able to be 100% productive. Being understanding of that is what builds and breeds that loyalty, right? As long as you can communicate that right. And so for me, that's how I run my digital agency, is accountability checks through forms or check-ins, regular one-on-one meetings to build relationships and things like that, in order to be able to effectively manage my team. But also, taking any opportunity that you can to show that you're on their side, that you're their friend, while also, maintaining that thin line that, hey, while I consider you like a friend and have that kind of relationship, this is still a professional environment where I did bring you on to do work, right? So being able to manage that fine line is kind of the sweet spot.
How do you manage that fine line, man?
that's a juggling act, and it comes with a lot of experience, right? For me, it's one of those things where I have Slack available. I don't know if you've heard of it or use Slack, but Slack is a kind of like a team communication tool. Respecting do not disturb times. They have access to my phone number, but they don't necessarily text me all the time or anything like that. But it's managing, it's letting them know that you can contact me during these windows and drawing lines, like proactively drawing lines, but not holding them at an arm's distance with regards to things like struggles, internal struggles or wins, personal wins in real life, or not real life, but in outside of work kind of life, as well as within work. Sharing those things is kind of how I delicately balance that line without making it seem as if I'm 100% all buddy with them, because that can be dangerous if they take advantage of it. And it's really pulling back a little bit if you start to see, or you start to get the sense of that happening, right? It's like I said, it's a delicate juggling act where you hold them at arm's length, but then you kind of like have open arms to embrace them if needed. And it comes with a lot with experience. It's a lot of trial and error. I've had a case where it made it very awkward, very awkward, because I hadn't learned this lesson at first. So he was ranting to me about, like personal problems and issues and stuff like that. And I was like, when that happens, that's when you need to be a little bit firm about the nature of the relationship, right? It was one of those things where I had to be like, hey, man, calm down. This isn't the forum that you should be discussing it. And I don't think I'm the best person that you should be communicating this with. And we're talking about sensitive personal information, things that as an employer, as a team leader, you don't necessarily need to know about their life. And when that comes up, that's when you're like, all right, line drawn, right? And communicating that line drawn, because communicating is also the key here, right? Is making sure that they know where the line is so that they can acknowledge that, hey, I won't cross this line. Because if you're vague about it and you don't properly define it with them, when you do define it, that's when the line gets blurred, and that's when gray areas happen.
Yeah, I love it, man. And I mean, it's setting those clear expectations where they know if they're winning or losing on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis.
Yeah.
Right. Where if it does come to a point where it's not working out, like they know they're on the chopping block, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to the accountability and I love it, man. I'm in the same page that you are of I don't even necessarily manage the people. I manage the systems that manage the people and hold the people accountable, right? So I can inspect what I expect and kind of set those benchmarks. But I'm curious with okay, with sales, maybe it's just because I've always been in sales, like, okay, having from my recruiter or my agents or an ISA, having those reported to me, okay, boom, that's, we know what those KPIs are. I know what their capacity should be. I know, right, what the conversion ratio should be through the line. I know what's acceptable, not acceptable. And even the same for like a transaction coordinator, right? Like, okay, here's the tasks, here's when they're due. It's pretty cut and dry, but then there's certain positions like, I don't know, video editors, graphic designers, even your previous world with development, right? Where for the business owner, it can be more of a challenge if we haven't done that role ourselves. Right. Because then it's like, well, I don't know how long this graphic design project should take. I don't know how long this video editing project should take. I don't know how long, maybe back in your coding days when, okay, hey, I need you to code this app for me. Well, how long should it take? Right? Like how do you kind of create and identify what those, key metrics, KPIs that you're reporting to and hold that accountability on some of those maybe kind of more difficult positions to, for business owners. I mean, for you, the tech thing might be easy because you how long that shit takes, right?
Yeah,
but your typical business owner, if they hire some in-house development, right, they wouldn't know how long that stuff would take.
So especially for technical positions like that, whether it's development or technical / creative, like video editing or graphic design, even if you don't know how to do it, you should at least know how to scope it, what the goal of the end product is going to be. Whether it's a video that is X length with various music and you want it in this style, that kind of thing, that should all be properly laid out. It's a common problem that I see in development, right? Where the requirements are extremely vague, and it's these vague requirements that often result in timeline extensions, and deadline delays and things like that. So it's the first thing as a business owner that you need to know in order to be able to keep track of key KPIs and indicators, metrics that you don't have knowledge in, is first defining the scope of what you're trying to do and getting as granular with it as possible. And whether you're trying to build a team in-house or you're trying to outsource that, never get an estimate from just one person. Try to get an estimate from multiple people. So if you're not a graphic designer yourself, if you're not a developer yourself, and you're trying to find somebody to do that kind of thing for you, there's websites like Upwork or Fiverr or other places that you can find credible people, people who have development or have those skills as a video editor and graphic designer, that can estimate how long that work could take. And if you get a couple metrics, you don't necessarily need to hire them. You could pitch the job or have the job open as a kind of like an open job and have it a requirement for them to indicate how long they think that project would take. That's just your indicators right there that, this could take anywhere from 48 hours to a week, 2 weeks, a month. And those should be your KPIs, or at least your timeline indicators. That said, though, one of the most important ways to keep on top of this is to have regular check-in meetings to assess the progress and talk to them about deadlines and blockers. For my team, especially for roles like that, media management, account management, we meet daily, and it's usually a short 15-minute to half an hour meeting, but I make it a point to meet virtually over Zoom, just because it allows me to connect with my teammates a little bit better, as opposed to updates in Slack, which these kind of meetings can be done, but it takes out the personal element of it, right? It takes out the personal connection element of it. So I like to retain that aspect of my business. So I meet over video, and we do what we call a daily huddle, which is basically a daily check-in meeting where everybody goes through what they did yesterday and then what their focus is on today. Any updates to timeline, any blockers, and blockers is a huge one, because if one of our teammates is blocked, like they need a particular picture or they need a particular media asset or something like that, that somebody else needs to provide, we surface it to the entire team so that there's visibility and there's somebody that can be held accountable, responsible for that. And it's not like a dead end, a loophole that all of a sudden things fall through the cracks, right? So having that open communication is really important for making sure that those timelines, those KPIs are met.
Love it, dude. So then, as you grow this and expand this, like, all right, like when you Amazon, it's, right now, because maybe, team's not so large where everybody does have access to you, but like you're at Amazon, it's not like you're able to call up Jeff Bezos and be like, hey, dude, I got this problem, right? So then, for those that have a big enough organization where there's no way that the owner, CEO of the company can, you get to the point where they can only have so many direct reports, right? Through all because you've had so many experiences in all these different fields and so forth, like, what have you seen from a leadership standpoint, kind of the best maybe to model after, as far as, number of direct reports, and then, kind of so you can have that. Because look, you don't need to have that relationship and that connection with Jeff Bezos, but you might, need to with your man in that department, right?
Yeah. So one of those things that is really important to making sure that you maintain that level of culture is, I forget where I heard this, but I love the principle of it. And it goes, you should never have a team bigger. I think it was like, you should never have a team bigger than what 2 large pizzas can feed, or something like that. Because then you start losing touch with a lot of people. And I've experienced this in the past within the corporate world, with various teams that I've worked with in the past, where the team just got too big. And when the team got too big, the direct reporting manager just had less time for each individual team members. And I've had my conversation, my one-on-one meetings be postponed or be pushed back or canceled because of that, which, leaves you feeling a little neglected. And that's kind of like what builds that resentment within the team. And so one of the things that I recommend any team leader or any owner doing is making sure that you schedule those times and adhere to them as best as possible. And the only reason you should be canceling those or postponing those are emergencies, right? If you prioritize them, it lets them know that, you are a priority for me, you are valuable to me. And so keeping the team tight and small is going to be a very important concept to that. But once you get to the point where it might get too big, you'll want to expand your team eventually, right, as you scale. Making sure you build sub teams and organize sub teams that follow that rule, right, of no more than 2 pizzas, 2 large pizzas, or whatever the case is. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you as a business owner should remove yourself completely out of the business for whatever reason. One of the best things that some of the companies I've been with, LinkedIn in particular, was they had a forum where you had access to the CEO, the business owner. Even though it was kind of like limited access, it was like, once a month or once every other month, where at least at that scale, right? once a month or once a quarter, where it was like an all hands Q&A, right? Where you could ask the owner any questions, any burning questions that you had or needed or wanted answered, and he would answer you personally, right? And so on a smaller scale, maybe having one of those once a week, if your team is big enough or small enough, or if you can't do that, twice a week or once every 2 weeks. But I can't imagine unless you're a large real estate brokerage, not being able to do that at least once a month.
Yeah. Yep. Love it, man. Love it, dude. So then any that virtual aspect, because when it comes to the empathy, I know you already talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
But from that virtual aspect, I mean, any kind of important thing you've seen that maybe we haven't discussed thus far, where it's like, that you see is a mistake with your brokerage owner clients or large team leaders, right, trying to run their virtual teams. Is there like any that hey, make sure you're doing this or make sure to not do this, right, to ensure they're not messing something up?
Yeah. Running a virtual brokerage, the key things to do is make sure you communicate. Sometimes even over communicate, and when at all possible, defer to whether it's video or voice over text if possible, because then a lot of stuff can get lost in translation. And running a successful brokerage, you never want things to be miscommunicated, right? Especially things that could be mistaken as ill feelings or been taken out of context. You always want to communicate those over video and over voice. It's that level of connection that makes sure that everybody is understood. So prefer face to face over phone, and then phone over text when you're communicating, and do your best to over communicate, especially within the digital age, within the scope of updating your team members or your team lead. Over communication is better than under communication, right? If you can hit the sweet spot, sure, but most people the sweet spot is very elusive to them. So over communicate prefer over communication over under communicate. I'd prefer to be annoying to my manager with the pretense that he understood and got my message, as opposed to having my manager reach out to me and be like, hey, I haven't heard from you, what's going on, right? That lets me know of that I'm not communicating well, and that there might be some doubt being sowed, right? So over communicate, that's really important, and it's over communicating on both ends, right? It's a give and take relationship, 50-50 between the employer and the employee, or the team lead and the team, right? If the team lead, in order to build that trust, needs to communicate as much as possible, just as much as he expects to be communicated with, right? So digital brokerage 101, communication, and that's the premise of everything in life, relationships, it's over communication or communication is so key.
Yep. Love it, dude. So, Bao, I mean, for anybody that's watching and listening to this, man, if they want to, if they have an interest in learning more, speaking to you more, signing up with, because you got the lead generation service, you got an ISA and a lead follow-up service, and helping them, sounds like, with a lot of this follow-up and automation, and then the coaching component to it and so forth. Like, where are the best place for anybody that's watching and listening to this to go learn more about it, to maybe, jump on a discovery call, whatever, to see if this is right for them, and to take action on that?
Absolutely. So the obligatory sources are, my website, www.bausdigital.com. Baus is in BAOSS, and then digital.com. But my preferred method of communication is just Facebook. Find me on Facebook, facebook.com/I'm Bao Lee, IMBAOLE. Shoot me a friend request, send me a message request. I love talking to people. And I prefer that over you going through my funnel, just because I get to know you, I get to know who the viewers are, the audience is, who you guys are, and make sure that you mention you came from Joshua's podcast. That's going to be a great common ground to start off with, so that I know who to give priority attention to. Because my inbox gets slammed like every single day, especially with my team doing outreach and all that stuff. But if you let me know, or you let my team know through my messenger box that you came from Joshua's podcast, I'll be there to respond personally. So, and then we'll connect, and we'll see if you'd be a good fit for the program. We're pretty selective with who we work with, just because expireds and FSBOs aren't easy to convert, and we like to work with people, or at least know somebody that's coachable before we get to work with them. So, I think that's probably the best way to contact me.
Yeah, awesome stuff. And those that are watching and listening, if you could just scroll below wherever you're at, iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube, scroll below, you'll see the show notes. We'll have all the links, social media handles, all that in there. And Bao, man, I truly appreciate you being here, man. Truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here, dude. It's been an honor. It's been a lot of fun, my friend.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor to be here. It's been absolutely fantastic. Being able to speak to your audience as well as you. Thank you again for the opportunity. It's been fun.
Yeah, 100%, brother. All right, and those watching, listening, as always, truly appreciate you being here. Truly appreciate all your support. Keep up the amazing work. Keep kicking ass, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.
I hope you enjoyed this GSD Mode podcast episode. Now make sure you get shit done and smash that subscribe button now.